Hello friends, welcome to the second session of Learn Android video series. I am Abhishek Vyas, member of G Innovation. Today we are going to see how to set up your development environment for developing Android applications. Today's agenda will start with the recap of Android architecture which we discussed in the last session. Then we'll move on to understand what are the different components of Android development environment. Then we'll see how to set up Android development environment. Then we'll understand two important tools which are shipped with Android development tools. These are Android SDK Manager and Android Virtual Device Manager. After that, we'll build our first Hello World application, and at the end of the session, we'll have some self-study topics. I hope you have understood the Android architecture and also done the self-study topics which are related to binder, DVM, application framework components, and how Service Manager works. Now let's discuss about Android development environment. Most of the applications are written in Java. So you need Java SDK 6 or higher for developing Android applications. You also need Android SDK tools which are used for developing Android applications. The Android platform. All applications have targeted platform like Gingerbread, Ice Cream Sandwich, Jelly Beans, etc. You need to download specific Android platform to develop the application for targeted Android version. Android SDK Manager and Android Virtual Device Manager are two important tools that ships with Android SDK tools. We will talk about them in detail. Also, Eclipse is an IDE which is not a mandatory tool, but it is a preferred IDE for developing Android applications. Also, you need Android developer tools, commonly known as ADT plugin, which is responsible for integrating Eclipse with Android SDK tools. Now let's see the system specifications. It supports multiple operating systems. You can have Windows XP, Vista, 32 or 64-bit or Windows 7 32 or 64-bit operating systems. You can also develop your Android applications on Mac OS, and also there are some Linux which are supported for Android development. Now let's see how to set up Android development environment. As discussed, you'll be needing JDK. You can download JDK from Oracle website. Then you'll be needing Android SDK ADT bundle. This is the simplest way of starting with the Android development. If you download this package, it automatically installs Eclipse with ADT plugin. It installs Android SDK tools. It also installs the latest Android platform tools. In case if you want to create applications for other Android platforms and not the latest one, you need to download the additional packages using Android SDK Manager. This is how Android SDK Manager will look like. I'll show you here. This is the Android SDK Manager. It has tools and different Android platforms. So with each Android release, you have SDK platforms, sample SDKs which you can refer, and there are some other documentations and stuff. You can use this Android SDK Manager to install and update your packages. Android Virtual Device Manager. All Android applications can be tested in an Android virtual device in an emulated Android phone environment. Android Virtual Device Manager is used to configure Android virtual devices. Now, without wasting any further, we'll start with the live demos. We'll see how to create AVD configuration using AVD Manager, and then we'll create a Hello World application and check its output on emulator. So this is how the AVD Manager will look like. You have two tabs, Android virtual devices and device definitions. These are some of the pre-configured device definitions. You can use any of that. On click of new, you can create a new Android virtual device. Let's say I create test Android AVD device. I select Galaxy Nexus as a pre-configured device. You can also have emulated front and rear camera. I'll just reduce the memory, and whenever you launch Android virtual device, it takes a lot of to reduce the time and test faster. What you can do is you can use the snapshot option. So whenever you close your AVD, it will be stored in the hard drive, and whenever you launch it, it will be launched directly from the snapshot, reducing the launch time. Now my AVD is created. You can select this AVD and click on Start. Here also you need to give the launch from snapshot and save to snapshot options. Then only it will be using snapshot. For the first time it will take a lot of time, but once it is launched and saved in snapshot, it will be easier to start the Android again. Now this emulator has been launched. Now let's see how to create the first Android application using Eclipse. I have Eclipse IDE open, and I also configured the ADT plugin for this Eclipse. To create a new project, you need to go to File, New, Project. Under Android, you will have Android application project. This option will be available only if you have configured your Eclipse with ADT plugin. In this wizard, you need to give the application name, that's Hello World. Also, you need to specify the package name. This should be a unique name across the world, so I'll specify it as com.ginnovation.helloworld. You need to specify the minimum required SDK, that's Android 2.2. Now what does that mean? If you whatever Android version that you specify as minimum required SDK, it will support all the Android versions above this version. This is the target SDK, and then you have compile with. Typically compile with is the latest version of the Android. You can also create the custom launcher icon, create activity, and you can specify the workspace. Here you can specify the image or the text for the logo. We'll also create a blank activity. We'll discuss what are the activities in detail in our next session. I'll give the activity name as Hello World, and the local name and the navigation type you can also specify. For now, let it be none. Once I click the finish, it will create entire project with the default files. It will add all the default values, and all the necessary files that are needed for creating an Android application will be created automatically. And this very important thing is the layout. So this is my layout, how my application will look like, right? Now to check this application in the emulator, what I can do is I can go to run. You can do debug as or run as. Debug as Android application. So when I click on debug as Android application, it will compile the Hello World application. It will create an APK file and will load it in this emulator. See, your first Hello World application is ready, and you can check its output in this emulator. Isn't it very simple? We'll talk about more on creating different applications, the layouts, and what are the files that are created when you create a new Hello World application or new Android application in our next session. For now, let's move on to our next topic. That's for you, that the self-study topics. I want you to try out how to prepare Android development environment for your existing Eclipse IDE. I also want you to try out some command line operations for creating AVD configuration, launching emulator, creating a project. That you can create the same Hello World application through command line, and you can test project on emulator. These are the references that I've used from developer.android.com. You'll get a lot of stuff, how to create new applications, the command line options, and everything. Thank you very much for your time. You can follow us on our blog, that is ginnovation.blogspot.in. You can also follow us on our Facebook and Google Plus site.